Welcome to Mimir's Forge. Today we are building Ben's home on Tatooine. For this I first cut a block of XPS foam. This will be the hut later. The block is still too high. About 3 centimeters have to be cut off to stay in scale. This styrofoam ball is supposed to be the dome on the roof of Ben's hut. I cut it in 2 halves. I will also find a use for the second half. The dome finds its place. I use PVA glue for this. The hut has 2 doors in total. One of them should have an arch that forms a kind of small canopy. I am using XPS foam for the first time. It's amazing how quickly you get results with it. At irregular intervals there are columns, much more wedges, on the outer walls. Some of them are higher, some lower. I also make them out of XPS foam. Here I use the arc to mark the position of a door. Then I cut along the mark. I hollow out the door with tweezers and a knife. I use the same scheme for the windows. There is a kind of bulge on one side. For this I use the remaining half of the styrofoam ball. But before that, the door arch is glued. The first wedge comes into place. A few more follow. Until finally the last wedge is glued. To glue the bulge, I put some parchment paper underneath. There is a pedestal in some corners. I'll cut them to fit. I have prepared the pedestals. Now these are glued with PVA glue. It is such a pleasure for me to work with XPS foam that we are now also looking at how the other 2 platforms are glued. In the meantime, you are welcome to press the like button. Doesn't look bad at all. In the movie you can see a kind of box that sits on the dome. There it is. The bulge is too far out for me, so I cut it back a bit. It doesn't matter if it looks a little messy. This conceals the putty immediately. I use ready putty from the tube. I use it to work the entire building. It should create an interesting structure. I cut off a smaller piece from the large spatula. I think this creates an interesting pattern. After drying, the surface was a bit too rough for me. I smoothed the surface a bit with coarse sandpaper. Before further attachments follow, I seal the surface with a mixture of water and PVA glue. A thin tube is attached to one of the platforms. I drill a hole to glue a slightly thicker pipe to the roof. This tube consists of a piece of straw. The box in front of the dome gets a piece of polystyrene that looks a bit like an air vent. The doors are now also made from polystyrene panels. I just cut off the excess. The doors can be glued with a little force. The chimney, or whatever, gets a head. I glued small polystyrene pieces into the windows. I'll paint them black now. I paint the doors red-brown. I chose a dark orange as the base color. I'm going to paint the whole building with it. The attachments are initially given a shade of grey as the base color. To make the surface more interesting, I apply a brown in various places and immediately take most of it off again. The pipes also get a little brown tones. Now I use a mixture of dark oil paint and isopropyl. So far so good, looks okay to me. Ben's cabin on Tatooine isn't complete without a moisture evaporator. I bought a used SLA printer for this. This is the first time I'm using it. I'm very excited to see the result. It's so cool to watch the printer work. The part you can see now looks good. Printing took about 15 hours. Now he's done. Now I can remove the model, including the bracket. The piece is separated from the holder with gentle force. First, our moisture evaporator is cleaned with isopropyl. Then it comes under UV light. The UV light hardens the resin completely. I'm really impressed with the print quality. I primed the piece outside. Now I apply grey acrylic paint. I paint some buttons and displays to give the model a little more life. Just like Ben's hut, the moisture evaporator is a few years old. A bit of rust and dirt should therefore not be missing. With some dark brown oil paint, which I diluted a lot, I emphasize a few more details. Now that everything is painted, the hut and the evaporator are glued onto a styrofoam base. The terrain consists of a mixture of sand, water and PVA glue. I spread this thinly around the hut and evaporator. It is important that afterwards there are no gaps between the hut and the base, so I work thoroughly around the hut. I paint the sides with black acrylic paint. Here's the finished result. If you want to do a good deed, press the like button, and if you don't want to miss anything, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.